She stood in my yard at 7:14 in the morning, holding a metal ruler like a weapon, measuring my lawn blade by blade. 4/10 of an inch over the limit, she said, like she'd caught me robbing a bank. I laughed, she didn't. 3 days later, a certified letter landed in my mailbox with a $200 fine attached. And by the time the rain came that weekend, her entire double standard was about to wash out into the open for the whole neighborhood to see. My name is Rachel Bennett, and 6 years ago my husband Mike and I bought our first house on Willow Creek Lane, inside a quiet subdivision called Maple Ridge Estates. 42 homes, manicured lawns, a community pool nobody used before Memorial Day, and an HOA that mostly stayed out of our business, until Deborah Voss became president 18 months ago. Deborah was 61, retired from something in insurance underwriting, and she treated the HOA bylaws the way some people treat scripture. She drove a white Buick with a Protect Property Values bumper sticker, and she walked the neighborhood every single morning at 6:45 with a clipboard, a tape measure, and I later learned an actual 6-inch metal ruler she kept in her cardigan pocket. Before Deborah, the HOA sent maybe 2 violation notices a year, usually for something obvious like a car up on blocks. Under Deborah, the newsletter turned into a weekly list of offenses: mailbox flags left up too long, trash cans visible before 6 p.m. A wind chime that violated noise aesthetic guidelines nobody had ever heard of. Mike and I kept our heads down. We mowed on Saturdays, edged the driveway, kept our fence stained the approved shade of cedar whisper. We weren't troublemakers. We just wanted to raise our 2 kids in a nice neighborhood without drama. Our daughter Emma was 7, our son Jack was 5, and most Saturdays you'd find them riding bikes in loops around the cul-de-sac while Mike edged the flower beds and I hauled clippings to the curb. It was the kind of ordinary that made the mortgage feel worth it. I liked our neighbors. I liked Priya 2 doors down, who brought over tamales every December. I liked the quiet. I didn't know yet how much that quiet was about to cost me. That spring, though, Central Texas got hit with 3 weeks of rain almost back to back, the kind that turns every calendar into guesswork. Mowing schedules got wrecked across the entire subdivision. Grass grew fast and wild in every yard on the street. Every yard, that is, except the ones that mattered to Deborah. I didn't know it yet, but that rain was about to become the single most important piece of evidence in the fight of my life. And it started, of all places, with a ruler. The first notice came on a Tuesday. I remember because it was recycling day and I was hauling the bin to the curb when I saw Deborah's Buick idling in front of our house. She rolled down her window. "Rachel, your grass is out of compliance." Deborah, it rained for 4 days straight. The bylaws don't have a rain exception. She held up her phone, showing a photo of our lawn with a ruler laid across the blades like she was performing surgery. 4 4/10 inches, the maximum is 4/4 of an inch. I stood there in my driveway holding a recycling bin, genuinely unsure if I was being pranked. "I'll mow this weekend," I said. "You'll have a notice by Thursday," she said, and drove off. She wasn't lying. Thursday afternoon, a certified letter arrived. Violation Notice 417, Landscaping Maintenance, Section 4. 2C. Fine, $150 due within 15 days, escalating to $200 if unresolved. I mowed that Saturday. Case closed. I thought it wasn't. 2 weeks later, notice number 2 arrived, this time for excessive thatch buildup, a term I'd genuinely never heard applied to a residential lawn. Then a third, for a non-uniform mow pattern, as if Deborah expected diagonal stripes like a baseball outfield. I called the HOA office after that third one. Deborah answered herself. "Deborah, 3 notices in 5 weeks feels excessive for a lawn Mike mows every single Saturday. I don't set the standards, Rachel, I enforce them." Her voice was flat, rehearsed, like she'd said the line 100 times before to 100 other homeowners. "If you'd like to appeal, the process is in the bylaws." I asked her point blank how many other houses on our street had gotten a notice that spring. She told me she didn't track it that way. I found that hard to believe from a woman who carried a ruler in her cardigan pocket. What really got under my skin wasn't the fines themselves. It was what I started noticing on my daily walks with the dog. The Hendersons at 214 Willow Creek had grass that had to be pushing 7 inches, easy, and their mailbox post was practically swallowed in weeds. No notice. The rental property at 228, managed by an out-of-state landlord who never showed his face at HOA meetings, had a lawn that looked like a hayfield. No notice. I mentioned it to my neighbor, Priya, over the fence one evening. "Deborah's had it out for the Henderson side of the street for years," Priya told me. "Something about a dispute over a shared driveway easement back before you moved in. She leaves them alone now, but she's found a new project." Me? Priya just raised her eyebrows. I didn't want to believe I'd become someone's target for no reason, but the pattern was getting hard to ignore. 3 violation notices in 5 weeks for infractions measured in tenths of an inch, while entire yards 2 doors down grew wild without a single letter. I started keeping a folder. Every notice, every date, every fine amount. I photographed my lawn every Saturday morning right after mowing, timestamped just in case. Then came the letter that changed everything, not from the HOA's newsletter, but a formal one printed on Maple Ridge Estates letterhead, delivered to my door by Deborah herself in person at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. "This is your final warning before we refer the account to our collections attorney," she said, handing it over like she was serving a subpoena. "Deborah, I mowed 3 days ago. The photo I have shows otherwise." She actually pulled up the photo on her phone again, except this time, when I looked closely at the timestamp in the corner, something didn't add up. The metadata said the photo was taken on a date I'd already mowed and photographed my own yard. I asked to see the timestamp again. She pulled her phone back before I could read it clearly. "I don't have time for this, Rachel," she said, and walked back to her Buick. Something told me that photo wasn't as solid as she thought it was. And 3 days later, when 11 straight days of rain finally broke over Maple Ridge Estates, I was about to find out exactly how far Deborah Voss had been willing to bend the truth to make an example out of my family. The rain started on a Sunday and didn't let up until the following Thursday. 11 days. Weather alerts, flash flood warnings on the local creek, 2 feet of standing water at the corner of Willow Creek and Birchwood. Nobody in Maple Ridge Estates was mowing anything. The ground was too soft, and half the yards had standing puddles that would have drowned a mower engine. I figured reasonably that the HOA would issue some kind of blanket grace period. Every HOA I'd ever heard of does that during extended severe weather. Instead, on day 9 of the rain, I got a $200 escalated fine in my mailbox. Not a warning. An actual invoice due in 10 days with a note about continued noncompliance despite prior notification. I decided that night I wasn't going to just accept it. I opened my folder, the one with every notice, every fine, every time-stamped photo of my own lawn, and I started building something bigger. First, I requested the HOA's violation records under our state's HOA disclosure statute, which requires the board to provide enforcement history to any homeowner in good standing upon written request. Deborah tried to stall me, first claiming the records weren't digitized, then claiming I'd need board approval, which under our bylaws simply wasn't true for a basic violation log. I didn't back down. I cited the statute number in my email. 2 days later, I had the spreadsheet. I opened it that night at the kitchen table after the kids were asleep, Mike reading over my shoulder with a beer going warm in his hand. 61 rows. Dates, addresses, violation codes, fine amounts, all of it laid out in plain black and white. "This is going to take a while," Mike said. It took about 4 minutes for the pattern to jump off the screen. What I found was worse than I expected. Over the previous 18 months, Deborah's board had issued 61 violation notices. 53 of them, 87%, went to just 6 households, including mine. The Hendersons at 214 with the 7-inch lawn I'd photographed myself, 0 notices in 18 months. The rental at 228, 1 notice for a broken gutter, later dismissed. Then I cross-referenced dates. My final warning photo, the one Deborah waved in my face on that Thursday night, its file metadata when I finally got a clean copy through my records request, was timestamped 2 days before the date she claimed. 2 days before I'd actually mowed. She'd used an old photo and redated her written notice to make it look current. That wasn't just petty enforcement. Under our state's HOA fairness statute, selective and inconsistent enforcement of the same rule against different homeowners is explicitly prohibited, and knowingly submitting falsified evidence to justify a fine crosses into something a lot more serious than a bylaw dispute. I called my cousin Ben, who'd spent 4 years as a paralegal at a real estate law firm before switching careers. I sent him everything, the spreadsheet, the timestamps, the photos. He called me back within an hour. "Rachel, this isn't just a strong case. This is the kind of thing that gets an HOA board personally liable if they don't fix it. Selective enforcement plus falsified documentation, you could go straight to the annual meeting with this, or straight to a demand letter. Either way, she's not going to like what happens next." I thought about all the nights Mike and I had stayed up arguing about whether it was worth fighting a $200 fine. About the folder full of receipts proving we'd done nothing wrong. About Deborah standing in my driveway with her ruler, so sure she'd never have to answer to anyone. The Maple Ridge Estates annual HOA meeting was in 9 days. I decided that's exactly where I was going to bring this. The meeting was held in the clubhouse, folding chairs arranged in rows facing a table where Deborah sat with the treasurer and secretary. Maybe 30 homeowners showed up more than usual, Priya told me, because word had gotten around that something was coming. Deborah ran through the usual business first: pool maintenance budget, a proposal to repaint the entrance sign, and I let her. I wanted the room full and settled before I raised my hand during open floor comments. Rachel Bennett, 219 Willow Creek, I said, standing up with a folder in my hand. I'd like to bring something to the board's attention regarding enforcement of Section 4(2)(c). Deborah's expression didn't change. Go ahead. Over the last 18 months, this board issued 61 violation notices. 53 of them went to 6 households, including mine 3 times, for grass measured in tenths of an inch during a period when this entire neighborhood got 11 straight days of rain. I held up a printed copy of the spreadsheet. Meanwhile, 214 Willow Creek received 0 notices for a lawn I personally photographed at over 7 inches. The rental at 228 received 1 notice in 18 months. A murmur went through the room. I heard someone near the back say, "I knew it wasn't just me." Priya, sitting beside me, gave my hand a quick squeeze under the table. Frank was already flipping to the last page of my printout, reading it twice. Even the secretary, who I don't think had said 10 words at any meeting I'd attended, had stopped typing notes and was just staring at Deborah. Deborah leaned into her microphone. Enforcement priorities are within the board's discretion, Rachel. They are, I said, until they stop being about the rule and start being about the person, and that's before we talk about this. I held up the photo side by side with the metadata printout. This is the photo you showed me on my porch, claiming it proved my lawn was still out of compliance on the 15th. The file metadata shows it was actually taken on the 13th, 2 days before, and 1 day before I'd already mowed and photographed my own yard, which I also have timestamped. The room went quiet in a different way now. That's a serious accusation, Deborah said, but her voice had lost its edge. It's not an accusation, it's a timestamp. I turned to the rest of the board. Under state code, selective enforcement of HOA rules against specific homeowners, combined with falsified documentation used to justify fines, isn't a gray area. I've already spoken with an attorney. I'm not looking to sue the association. I'm looking for this board to reverse 3 fines totaling $550, issue a written apology, and adopt a documented, uniform enforcement policy, starting with an audit of the last 18 months. The treasurer, a quiet man named Frank who I'd barely spoken to before, cleared his throat. Deborah, is this true about the photo dates? Deborah's jaw tightened. I would need to review my records. You reviewed them well enough to hand-deliver a final warning to my porch at 8 o'clock at night, I said. Someone in the back row, I found out later it was Mr. Henderson himself, stood up. I want to know why my property got skipped for 18 months while my neighbor got fined for a fraction of an inch. That's not a coincidence, Deborah, that's a pattern. By the end of the meeting, the board voted 4-1, Deborah casting the lone dissenting vote, to reverse all 3 fines, commission an independent audit of enforcement records going back 2 years, and require photographic evidence with verified timestamps for any future landscaping notice. Deborah sat through the entire vote in silence, her ruler nowhere in sight. The audit took 6 weeks. When it came back, it confirmed everything the spreadsheet had suggested and then some. 89% of all violation notices issued under Deborah's presidency had gone to 8 households, several of whom, it turned out, had disagreed with her publicly at past meetings or declined to support her re-election. 2 other homeowners came forward with their own falsified photo stories once mine became public. Deborah didn't wait to be voted out. She resigned from the board 11 days after the annual meeting, citing personal reasons in a 2-line email that nobody bothered replying to. Frank, the treasurer, stepped in as interim president, and within a month the HOA had adopted a formal written policy. Any landscaping violation now requires 2 board members to independently verify and photograph the issue, with GPS-tagged, time-stamped images, before a notice can be issued. Fines during declared weather emergencies are automatically suspended. My $550 in reversed fines came back as an account credit within 2 weeks. The written apology arrived the same day, signed by the full board, Deborah's signature notably absent. Mike framed a copy of that spreadsheet half-joking and hung it in the garage next to his tools. Proof, he called it, whenever a neighbor asked about the story. By then it had already made the rounds of every group chat on Willow Creek Lane. I saw her a few times after that from a distance. She stopped walking the neighborhood at 6:45 in the morning. The Buick disappeared from her driveway sometime in the fall. I heard from Priya that she and her husband moved to be closer to their daughter 2 states away, though I never confirmed it myself, and honestly, it wasn't really my business anymore. What stuck with me wasn't the money. $550 matters, but it's not life-changing. What stuck with me was how close I came to just paying that first fine, swallowing my frustration and letting it go, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Don't make waves, don't be difficult. Just mow your lawn and mind your business. But sometimes the person holding the ruler isn't measuring your grass. They're measuring how much you'll tolerate before you push back. And the only way Deborah Voss's double standard ever saw daylight was because 11 days of rain fell on every yard in that neighborhood equally, and I was the one who kept the receipts to prove it. These days, our HOA meetings are almost boring. Which, it turns out, is exactly what a homeowners association is supposed to be. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that enforced the rules against everybody except the people they liked, you already know how validating it feels when the truth finally catches up. Drop a comment and tell me your own HOA story. I read every single one. And if you want more of these real neighborhood justice stories, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.